Hi, everybody. I am really excited to talk to you tonight about the MTHFR gene because I know it can be very confusing. There's a lot of people, a lot of hubbub about this gene, right? And every time I hear hot topics, I'm always like, what's the reason why people are wanting to talk about this? Well, like, so what I plan to do tonight is I plan to really try to make this very complex topic and simplify it for you. That's my goal. So before I do that though, I would love to hear from you. How many of you guys are kind of like, I have no idea what this thing is. It seems confusing to me. Because listen, and it is confusing. It can be. So when I talk about this tonight, I'm really going to try to talk slow and I'm going to really try to help you understand it in a way that's very, very simplified. Okay. Because the MTHFR gene can be confusing, but I'm going to really try to break it down for you. Okay. What is the MTHFR gene? The MTHFR gene is like special instruction manuals inside your body. It tells your body how to make this one important helper enzyme. And the enzyme has a long name. And I'm not going to even try to pronounce that because it's very long. These genes are like mini instructions, like mini little blueprints in your cells. They're like copy machines, like translators. So the MTHFR gene is like a little instruction manual that helps your body use folate to stay healthy. Now, everybody has two copies of the MTHFR gene, one from each parent. Mutations and or variations can occur in one or both copies and are passed down from parents to children. So mutations in the MTHFR gene can affect how the body metabolizes nutrients and converts them into vitamins, minerals, proteins. This can also impact hormone and neurotransmitter levels, brain function, digestion, and cholesterol levels. Some mutations are associated with health problems like pregnancy complications, including chronic fatigue, fibromyalgia, heart disease, stroke, high blood pressure, cancers, dementia, headaches, mood disorders, the list goes on. So, what does the MTHFR enzyme do? The MTHFR enzyme helps your body to use a vitamin called folate or vitamin B9. So, folate is it's also called B9. Folate is found in foods like leafy greens, beans, oranges, and this enzyme changes folate into a form that your body can use to make DNA and other important things. So let's break this down because this is really, I think, going to help you guys a lot. So MTHFR stands for methylene tetrahydrofolate reductase. That's the long name. That's why they call it the MTHFR, just because it's a lot easier to say MTHFR. What the MTHFR is a defect in this gene. This MTHFR gene, if it has a defect, the function of this enzyme is to convert folic acid into the active form of folate. Okay, so folic acid is not the same thing as folate. Folate is B9. So if there's a defect in this MTHFR gene, which is basically the way your body breaks down folic acid. Now, before I go on to the next slide, because this is super important, because folic acid is a synthetic substance that is man-made, and folic acid is not found anywhere in nature. But folate is. So folate is B9. Okay, so 40 to 60% of all humans cannot convert folic acid into methylfolate, which is why there is this MTHFR mutation or this defect. So if you're deficient in folate, that's a huge health concern because that can increase homocysteine levels and things like that. For example, anytime you're looking at supplements, you do not want a supplement that has folic acid. Now, I wanted just to show you an example of really good high quality supplement. This is called Tangy Tangerine. And you see this has folate. Okay, so folate is what you want to look for. Folic acid is not what you want to look for. So let's go back to this because I really want you to understand this. So folic acid is sprayed on everything. So anytime you look at, let's say you look at on a label and it's something says enriched or enhanced. That means that they've sprayed it with folic acid. And folic acid, most people, if they have a defect in this gene, can't convert folic acid to the natural form of folate. Okay, so that's why this chart's going to really help you understand it. That's why I think visually, I think it's going to help you understand it. So folic acid is the problem because if you have a defect in the MTHFR gene, you can't convert that folic acid into methylfolate, which is B9. Okay, if you don't have a defect in this gene, then you can convert folic acid into methylfolate. That's kind of what the whole thing means. But the problem is if you don't have the option or the ability to be able to get methylfolate in your body and convert the folic acid into methylfolate, you're going to have other issues that arise in your health. I'm not going to go through all these because it's a little bit complex, but basically you could have coronary heart disease, strokes, and high blood pressure because when you don't have enough folate, it increases your homocysteine, which is all related to your heart. Also lowers methionine and SAMe, which is some other complications. Heart and coronary heart disease, I said that, but natural inflammatory response, and you'll end up with a lot of inflammation. So things like fibromyalgia, achy joints, arthritic type pain. This is why this whole defect, all the defect means, if somebody says you have a defect in the MTHFR, all it means is that your body can't convert folic acid into methylfolate, which is B9. That's all it means. Not everybody has this defect. However, between 40 and 60% people do. So if between 40 to 60 people have this defect, then, and you're eating, foods that are sprayed with folic acid, or you're taking supplements that have folic acid, and you can't convert them into methylfolate, this is when you have the problem because now you're deficient in methylfolate, and that's when all these other things happen. You also have the inability to make neurotransmitters to our full capacity. So I'm talking about like serotonin, dopamine, melatonin. It affects your moods. It can cause anxiety. It can cause depression. It can cause low dopamine, which gives you addictions to alcohol, addictions to drugs, addictions to cocaine, addictions to smoking. And melatonin is all about sleep. So if you have this defect, you're going to have sleeping issues. It's also been known to cause cancer. So there's all these things that can happen right here if you're trying to fix all this stuff and you don't really know what's going on. It could be this simple little defect in this little gene. Why is it important? Because the MTHFR enzyme helps keep your blood healthy, your brain working well, also helps your body get rid of harmful substances called homeocysteine. And homeocysteine builds up too much, and that's what causes the heart problem. So what actually happens, when the MTHFR gene does not work? Well, I already kind of went through it, but the MTHFR gene can stop working properly due to mutations or variations in your DNA sequence. There's a genetic component to it. So there's a couple mutations that can happen. However, the one I want to talk more about tonight is some non-genetic reasons that you can have mutations. Bad genes can be turned on or off. So this is kind of oversimplified, but I just really want you to try to hear me out on this. When we have bad genes we have defects in our genes, especially the MTHFR, they're turned on or turned off. So when you turn on bad genes, you're going to have disease. You're going to have your DNA, your genes, everything's not going to be working right. So when you turn those bad genes on, you can also turn bad genes off. How do we turn bad genes on? Like you flip a switch. If you turn a bad gene on, it's not always genetic. There's lifestyle things that happen when you turn bad genes on. So, what are some of those things? Well, caused by toxicity, chronic toxic burdens, long-term exposure. What do I mean by that? I mean like heavy metals, glyphosate, which is in your foods, they're spraying pesticides on your food, toxins, I'm talking vaccines, I'm talking preservatives, we're talking toxic hormones. If you're doing, HRT and you're not on the right dose, and you're putting the bad kind of estrogens in, that's what I'm talking about, things like that. Heavy metals, if you have mercury fillings, amalgams, if you have had a hidden infection in your mouth, if you're eating a really bad, poor diet that's full of preservatives and chemicals, that can turn bad genes on. So that's the bad news, right? I mean, it's very, very, very important that you guys understand that turning on those bad genes are pretty easy to do, but you can also turn them off. Some of the reasons or possible things that you can do to help with turning these genes off would be to avoid folic acid, like the grains. If you're eating crackers and rice and all these boxed cereals, and they say on the label, if it says enriched or fortified, that means that it has been sprayed with folic acid. So you got to avoid that. You also want to take the active form of B9. So make sure when you're buying your supplements that you're looking for folate, the active form of B9, not folic acid. You can also supplement with B12. That would be very helpful in helping you to turn off the bad gene. You want to stop eating gluten right away. You want to eat more dark green vegetables, organics. Why? Because you're getting rid of the chemicals. Remember, your body cannot detoxify these chemicals, preservatives, or heavy metals unless you have the proper method of doing that. These other things I said up here are going to help with at least, with that defect and helping your body get more of that folate. Just remember that it's important to note that having an MTHFR gene mutation doesn't necessarily mean you'll have health problems. Okay, I want to be very clear about that. But many people with these mutations don't experience any symptoms or issues. The impact can vary widely based on the individual. The other genetic and environmental factors can also play a role in how the mutation affects a person's health. Okay, so I want to go back. I just want to go back to this chart real quick, just so you guys can fully understand. So the MTHFR gene, which is the methyl tetrahydrofolate reductase, short for MTHFR, actually is an enzyme. When this enzyme has a defect, all that means is that your body this enzyme cannot convert folic acid into methylfolate. It can't. If this is working properly, if you don't have a defect, if the enzyme is working properly and you don't have a defect, then you're converting folic acid into methylfolate. But we should really not be eating a bunch of that folic acid anyway, because that is synthetic. We want to be able to do the more natural form of methylfolate. Again, you want to look for folate and methylfolate, but if you do have this defect, that is why. And so if you've been diagnosed with some depression or serotonin issues or addictions or high blood pressure, stroke, the first thing I would personally do is I would ask your doctor for a homeocysteine test, because if your homeocysteine levels are high, you probably have this defect. Okay. And then at least because if you know, then you can take some precautions and to make sure that you're doing these things. You're avoiding grains. You're taking a good quality B9, which is methylfolate. You're also taking a high quality B12. You're not eating gluten. You're not eating junk food and non-organic, and you're eating a lot of dark greens. You're eating organic. And then I did a class last week on stem cells, and the stem cell patch has been known to produce glutathione, which is also really helps to turn off bad genes. That's another tool in your toolbox for helping you with reversing this defect. Again, just never just one thing. And I hope that this was helpful in trying to kind of explain that because it can be very complicated. But it's never just one thing that's causing you to have a defect. So if you guys go and get that test done and you have that, it's just you have to make some lifestyle changes and you've got to do some evaluating of your lifestyle. What I mean by that is if you have this defect, you know it's been triggered because chances are most of the time it's not genetic. It can be, but most of the time it's because you've turned those bad genes on by toxins. Toxins are the biggest one. Toxins and inflammation and preservative and chemicals. Our country does not provide the ability for us to be healthy unless we make the conscious choice. You know, you go to the grocery store and 95% of the grocery store is unhealthy. 5%, which is the vegetable area and the organic meats area, you know, that's what 5% of the store is one little section. All the rest of the entire grocery store is full of canned goods and packaged food and frozen. You know what I'm saying? So the United States doesn't make it very easy to stay healthy. You have to put some effort into it and you have to understand this stuff. So once you understand that, you know, the MTHFR defect doesn't need to ruin your life, but it can ruin your life if you have it and you don't know why, right? Or you maybe have never had it tested before. And if you did have it tested and you found out you had it, it might be helpful for you because you can start making some changes. Again, remember your doctors, you go to your doctor and you say you want to test to get see if you have the MTHFR, then yeah, just have him test you, but he's probably not going to know. He's going to tell you this. He's going to say, "Oh, yep, you know, you're stuck with it for life and you're going to get cancer." And it's like, no, you can make some changes in your lifestyle so that you won't trigger those the effects of having that defect. Okay, so you just do some of the things that I mentioned in this class, and you should be okay. But you've got to. It's not corrected with a pill. It's not corrected with a medication. You have to change your lifestyle, which is pretty much the remedy for everything I teach in this class. That's always the number one thing. Medications do not reverse or heal you. They don't. Medications put band-aids on a wound. And then that's all it does. It does not, medications do not reverse or cure. Now, am I saying medications are bad all the time? No, I'm not saying that. I'm just saying in this particular case with the MTHFR, medication is not going to do it. You've got to turn that bad gene off. And you can do that with some of these lifestyle things I said. And the biggest one is detoxing and doing it the right way. And if you want to learn how to do that, come talk to me because I do have a whole entire program that is a cellular detox program that actually is done the right way. And it's not your doctors just say, oh, go do a 3-day colon cleanse. It's not what detoxing is. Detoxing is it's a lifelong process and there's steps to do it. So if you've been tested for this defect, you should get in touch with me because I can help you. I can help you with the process of detoxing from some of the, toxins that maybe have triggered this gene to turn on, the bad gene to turn on. I'm a type 1 diabetic with a weak immune system. So does this gene have to do with that? Okay. Well, type 1 diabetes is genetic. So unless you were diagnosed with type 1 in your 20s or 30s, then chances are you probably had type 2 and then it turned into type 1. But most part type 1 diabetes is genetic. And your weak immune system it's not really related. Well, okay, how do I explain? So anytime you have inflammation, this is a great question, by the way. There's just so many different ways to answer it because it's never just one thing, right? So if you have a weak immune system, that is because there's something suppressing it. So what is it that's suppressing your immune system? If you're getting sick all the time, or if I guess that's the biggest one, getting sick all the time, or you have had um, other cancer, it's another immune system thing, or autoimmune. There's something that is attacking your immune system. Okay, so we want to find out and get to the root of what's attacking the immune system. So, like, for example, if you're getting sick all the time, obviously there's something that your body is trying to fight off and it can't because it's been suppressed. Whether it's a hidden toxin, whether it's a hidden infection, whether it's you're not nutrified. This is a big one. A lot of people aren't nutrified. And having a MTHFR defect, you are deficient in B9, in methylfolate because you have the defect, which is not converting folic acid into that. And so this is why, if you have the defect, this is why they say you should supplement with a good B9 and a B12. So it's a good question, Beth, but um, a weak immune system, I would need to know a little bit more detail of what you mean by that. Yeah, insomnia, depression, anxiety. Yeah, that could be partly this, but it's also part of your diabetes too. So the good news is girl, I could totally help you with all of that. It's just not it's not one of those things that I could say, oh, it's for sure this or for sure that. It's like it requires a conversation together and you working with me so I can really help you because we want to do it the right way. That's the biggest thing. We want to find all of your upstream sources. We want to make sure that your nutrition is right. We want to make sure that you're nutrified. This is a big one. So many diabetics, because I work with women who are diabetic, pre-diabetic, insulin resistance, whatever. They have a toxic overload, but they also are nutrient deficient. And if you're diabetic, you are nutrient deficient because if you're diabetic, you have insulin resistance. Diabetes and insulin resistance go hand in hand. And if you're insulin resistant, you're not absorbing nutrition. So you're not absorbing vitamins. So you can take all the vitamins in the world that you want. And if you're not absorbing them, right? It's like you're wasting your money. So when you have symptoms like insomnia, depression, anxiety, there is definitely, you're not crazy. There's something that's triggering it. And it could be a part of your diabetes, the insulin, because you're injecting insulin. And if you have too much insulin, that can be a problem. That can make your insulin resistance worse. So if you worked with me, I would want to make sure that we try to get your body on the lowest insulin possible. And we got to look at your entire your lifestyle. We got to look at upstream sources. We got to do an evaluation and all that. So, but one thing you could do is just, it might be worth it just to see if you have this defect. But the doctor's not going to know what to tell you to do about it. Let's see, there's not too much that we can eat now that hasn't been sprayed with. Yeah. Or this is why it's a good question, Beth. This is why you want to non-GMO. Organic, if it has the organic seal on it. Now there's some products that will say, "Oh, it's all organic." If it doesn't have the seal, then that means that anybody can plop the word organic, but it hasn't actually been third-party tested. If they have the seal, it's gone through a lot of processes to make sure that it's free of GMO and chemicals, glyphosate, all of that. Okay, so you got to buy, especially your fruits and vegetables and your meat, you've got to really try to buy organic as much as you can. I ride with my husband who's over the road truck driver who drives cross country most of our diet. Yeah. Yeah, that fast food is probably triggering some bad genes. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Have an amazing rest of your night. I will see you guys next week. Bye.